Hello, my name is Lynn Livsey, and this is Encounters. I'm your full spectrum Gnostic, and boy, do I have a great podcast for you today. We're talking about Cthulhu, and he's supposed to be the giant monster asleep at the bottom of the ocean. And what we're going to be talking about today, is this real? Is this fake? Is this something made up? We're going to be going over all the different theories about this. And you can make up your own mind in the end, but this is really strange. So let's get started. We're talking Cthulhu. Okay. So most people today only knows the modern version of Cthulhu. But this story goes back for thousands of years. But we're going to first start with what most people know about Cthulhu today. And they know about Cthulhu from Lovecraft from the 1920s, who wrote about Cthulhu. And Lovecraft wrote about this giant monster that is asleep at the bottom of the ocean in his tower. He's asleep. And he's asleep because the sky is poisonous to him. But when the sky changes and the stars align, that he will awake. Okay. And then he will rise. But there is one little short passage which Lovecraft talks about, that he cannot rise by himself. He needs assistance. He needs people to say certain cantations and certain people to help him to awaken. And this gets into, I hate to tell you this, on some college campuses, they have these occult groups called the Cult of Cthulhu. These people that get together and supposedly they worship him and whatever, and they're working on their chants and everything, because when Cthulhu arises, this will be the end of the age of mankind. Now, I'd hate to be thinking that some people on college campuses are plotting the end of the age of mankind. You got to take that up with them, or maybe this is just a joke or a reason to get drunk or do whatever, but these groups do exist. Okay. And this is called the cult of Cthulhu. And some people believe that he's not the only one of these creatures that's going to arise. And this is where you get into these things about the Cthulhu Wars, that when he arises, all of these other Cthulhu type creatures will also arise and they will battle each other. Okay. And this is the modern form of the myth that most people know about. But this myth been going around a long time. And this myth is not an American myth. Okay, even though Lovecraft wrote in San Francisco in the 1920s. This myth of this thing coming out of the ocean been around for thousands of years. Okay, and the other modern myth that most people know about these giant monsters coming out of the ocean, was created in Japan after World War II in the 1950s, which is the Godzilla movies. And Godzilla is the giant monster which is coming out. And what awakened Godzilla and these other giant monsters is us doing dropping nuclear bombs is what awakens these monsters. Okay. And that is what brings them up. And then not only does Godzilla comes out from the ocean, these other ones starts rising, and then they fight each other. Okay, these are the two most popular modern version of this thing that's in the water. But as you always know, we like to go back to the beginning. We always like to go back to the beginning. Okay, because then you can't be saying that people is just making it up on TV. They've been seeing too many of those crazy movies in the middle of the night and whatever. So we like to take it all the way back to the beginning. And you got to go back to the Samaritan myths of 6,000 years ago. Okay. And when you was back in Sumer, back in Iraq, we found their clay tablets, and they had these, they wrote on seals. Okay, these was also talked about in some of the Nineveh tablets and things. They talk about this. They talk about when the Anunnaki first came here. Okay, we know about that Anunnaki. Okay. And when and even before, let's go back even before the Anunnaki came here. Okay. So we know about the Anunnaki. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But let's talk about, the Necronomicon and some of this other stuff talk about things long time ago. Okay. Long time ago. That, according to, the Sumerian tablets, that when the Anunnaki first came here, remember, why did they come here? Why did they come here? Their planet of Nibiru had a hole in its atmosphere. They needed gold, powdered gold. They would take gold and they would make it into particles, microatomic particles, and they would eject it into their atmosphere, trying to close the hole. But on Nibiru, gold was extremely rare. So they was looking for a source of gold. And they was scouring their planet. Then they started to scour the universe looking for gold. And one of them crossed the broken bracelet, okay, which is not the asteroid belt, which is the Oort cloud. And they came into our solar system. And they discovered the Earth, okay. And they landed and they tested the water and everything. And when they found gold, microscopic gold in the ocean. Okay. And they decided to set up a base on the earth to get the gold out of the ocean. This is when they first came here. This was super long ago. And how far back was this? This was back before the war. And this was because they say this was back when the elder gods and the ancient ones was one and the same. And how far back is that? They said when they first came here that the old ones was here. The old ones had leather skin and clover feet. We would call them today dinosaurs. So they was here that long ago when the dinosaurs was here. Okay. And they was mining the oceans for gold. Some kind of giant where they was vacuum cleaning probably billions of tons of water out of the ocean, and they would separate the microscopic gold out of the water, and they would dump the water back. So this is machines we can't even imagine. Okay. They was probably processing billions of gallons of water just to get, an ounce of gold or whatever. Okay. But when they came here, what happened was they was working with the old ones. The old ones end up blaspheming against God. And it says in the old tablets that they was destroyed from the surface of the earth and chased into their underground caves. And they captured one of their main caves. Okay. And they was exterminated from the surface of our world. This was written thousands of years before, we didn't even know about, dinosaurs until 200 years ago. This was written on clay tablets, which are thousands of years old. Okay, so there's some funny stuff that was going on. We know nothing about this planet. Okay. They talk about some very weird stuff. Okay. But along with that, how they talk about how the old ones or the dinosaurs was, exterminated from the surface of our planet, and then the Anunnaki refused to work, and then the new ones was created and all this stuff, and we were the new ones that was created to replace the old ones to help them to mine gold. Because after they found gold in the ocean, then they discovered gold in Africa, and they started mining for gold in the ground. And gold was a lot more plentiful in the ground than in the ocean. So they gave up on the ocean and started to mine in the ground. And this is why in South Africa, and other places in Africa, you have some, digging not, which are, you have minds which are tens of thousands of years old. Okay, who was mining thousands of years ago? We have no idea. We have a good idea if you go by those books. Okay. And this is why in parts of Africa you have found the remains of nuclear reactors. You have found remains of old mine shafts. They was doing stuff thousands of years ago. And and according to the books, they're the ones who set up the system here. Because they would mine gold here, they would process the gold, and then they would ship it up. There was a space station that wrote that we had 2 moons back in those days. And the space station was set up. And then from the space station, they would send it to their home planet. Okay. This is written. You can read about this in Hindu texts. You can read about this in tablets. All kind of weird stuff. Okay. Very weird. But what does this have to do with Cthulhu? Okay. It talk about a war that broke out. Okay. Because in all the myths, it always talk about how, what the king or the main god, I'm talking God with the little g. Okay, these are all Anunnaki beings. They was always afraid of getting bumped off. And the prophecies was always saying that the king was going to be bumped off by his son. So it talks about, and I'm just going to tell you what the prophecy says. So, what these little stories says, and you can believe maybe they made this up, whatever. We're just talking about this. So, what the god Neptune was doing. God Neptune knew that one of his kids was going to bump him off. So as his wife had children, he would swallow the children. Okay. And then when Zeus was born, she did not want him to swallow Zeus. So she gave him a rock instead of Zeus, and he ended up swallowing the rock. Okay. And she hid Zeus. And her thing was she was mad because she wanted her children released. They was not dead. They was imprisoned inside of him. And she wanted them released. Okay. And that was what mom wanted. But when Zeus went up against Neptune, he ended up killing him and sending him to the underworld. Now, this is a thing that the book's always talking about. Gods are not supposed to be able to be killed. So they never talk about how gods was killed. They always say that he was sent to the underworld. Okay. And this pissed mom off because she did not want to bump dad off. She only wanted her children released. And she was mad at Zeus and all the other ones for what they did. So she created a weapon to seek vengeance against them. And she created a giant serpent, it said. And this serpent was giant and no one could stand against it. And its tentacles was poisonous and all this stuff. And it was humongous in size and no one could stand against this thing. Okay. And the gods ship, they was just petrified and terrified. Okay. Until one stood up and said he was willing to stand against it. And that was Marduk. So Marduk was given the weapons. He was given the Triton, he was given the net, and several other weapons. And Marduk captured this thing in the net. He bounded it in magical chains, and he put it to sleep at the bottom of the ocean. Okay. And then he ended up killing mom and all kind of stuff. And this what led to the war in the Greek myths between the Titans and the Olympians and the Titans got in this war, and the Olympians won, and all the Titans was sent to the underworld. I guess they was all got killed. Okay, and that's how the Olympians took over. Okay, and that's how you get all the Greek gods. That's how they came to take over, and they took possession of the earth. Okay, now. This creature was asleep at the bottom of the ocean. They did not kill it. It was asleep. And this is the first time that this creature is mentioned. back long time ago, during this war, that he was bound in chain and put asleep at the bottom of the ocean. Okay. So this is where this original story came from, is that this creature is still asleep at the bottom of the ocean. And this is what Lovecraft talked about, that we talked about earlier, is that this creature is asleep in a tower. Okay. And throughout history, people have talked about this creature at the bottom of the ocean. Okay. It's just a crazy story. Nobody believes this stuff, right? But this is even mentioned in the Bible. Okay. The Bible talk about this creature that comes out of the ocean, which have 7 heads and 10 horns. You keep coming across this creature in different religious books all over the world about this giant creature and how he rises. Okay. Because this thing is in the ocean. So it's not just them talking crazy. The Bible's talking crazy. A lot of books are talking crazy. But they just talk about this thing rising. Okay. Now, what do this creature do? Now, is this creature still alive or not? Some people believe that this creature is still asleep. Some people believe that he's not there anymore because, as I told you several times before, Zeus was a lover of women. And Zeus was always fooling around, and his fooling around started a war on earth, which started a war on heaven. And that war on earth was between Greece and Troy, the Battle of Troy. That's the reason people keep talking about this Battle of Troy, because the Battle of Troy was started by Zeus and him fooling around. It started a war on earth, which started a war in the heaven. And in this war, remember, the main guy is always bumped off by his son. They always believe that their older son is going to bump them off. But they're always bumped off by their youngest son, not the oldest son. And Zeus was the youngest of all the sons when he knocked off Neptune. And Zeus was bumped off by Apollo, which was his youngest son. And Zeus was sent to the underworld. Okay. And Apollo is who rules today. That's the reason in the Bible it says that the name of the devil is Apollyon. Apollo. Okay. So, back to our story. In that battle, which was a battle on heaven and on earth, some people believe that that giant monster was killed. Because, as we have heard 1,000 times, when they had this battle, the cry came out to release the Kraken. A lot of people believe that the Kraken was Cthulhu. And this was the weapon that was used to help Apollo win. The Kraken was released against them because it was the weapon that Zeus was using. It was bound in chain. And by this monster being killed or destroyed, this is how the Olympians was able to take over. Okay. So, is this monster dead? Is he still alive? I wasn't there. We don't have no videotape of anything like that. So, we don't really know. Okay. But some people believe that Cthulhu is no longer alive. Because when they released the Kraken, he was used in the war and he was destroyed in the war. Okay. And they have made some fictional movies about that. When you read the movie about, the fighting of the gods and everything, you will see that giant monster. Okay. Now, this is also, I hate to say this, again talked about, because even though the main creature may be dead, his babies is still alive. This is talked about in the Bible. When they talk about when the gate of hell is open, that these little creatures will come out, which will be like a scorpion, and they will have like the head of a lion and the tail of and they will have tails that sting, and they will torture man for 5 months. A lot of people believe that these are the babies of Cthulhu or the baby of the Kraken. Okay. Other people believe that he's not the only one down there, that there's several of these creatures down there, and these creatures, because not only is, throughout the Bible and throughout other books, they talk about this giant serpent. Okay. Not only do we have 10 heads and 10 horns, in Necronomicon and other books, or even medieval books, they talk about how the people, this is talked about in Lord of the Rings, where you have this giant serpent, and he's the last of his kind. They end up killing him, but they does not kill his babies. He has his eggs, and his eggs have not hatched, and his eggs are hidden in the ground. This is where you get into movies like, A Ring of Fire and all this stuff, where people come across these these dragon eggs. And these dragon eggs start hatching, and these dragons come out. Okay, because this giant monster in the ocean is always portrayed different ways. Sometimes it's portrayed as a giant dragon or a giant creature coming out of the ocean with little baby wings. And sometimes it is displayed as a giant creature coming out of the ocean with giant wings. We don't know. It's bad enough if you're a giant creature coming out of the ocean. If you're a giant creature coming out of the ocean with giant wings, that's really bad. Okay. Because then, just like in these monster movies, not only do you have a giant creature roaming around destroying everything, then he flies off and can go and fly somewhere else and destroy something else. Okay, so we do not know if he have the baby wings or we have the big wings or whatever, but this is talked about in different books. And this is why you hear about these movies again that be talking about this giant dragon. And this giant dragon is when he arises, he's going to, destroy a lot of the earth and everything. Again, this goes back, because what people have been trying to do, people have always been reading these books. Up until modern times, if they caught you reading these books, the Inquisition wanted to talk to you. Okay. And you didn't want to be burnt at the stake or anything. So a lot of this stuff was, put into code or put into fictional stories or put into myths. But throughout history and every culture, in China, their symbol is this giant walking snake, this giant dragon. And in China, they always talk about the dragon is going to return. And this just flying dragon. Okay. And back in old Europe time, they talked about this giant dragon too that was flying around. And they killed the dragons of the old dragons of Europe. But again, he has eggs which are hidden inside of the earth. And this is why they made these movies about, you could, teach your dragon to fly and everything, and you can have your pet dragon and everything. I don't know if these eggs really hatch. Are they going to let you fly on top of them, or maybe they might just eat you for lunch or dinner? We don't really know. But to me, what is fascinating is, this is what I go by. If something is fictional, it's just a local fictional story. But how can something be fictional and you go all over the world and people are talking about this fictional creature? Now, everyone describes it differently. Some people believe Cthulhu is like a giant octopus type creature that comes out of the ocean. Some people describe him as a giant dragon that comes out of the ocean. Some people describe him as a giant monster that comes out of the ocean. But everybody is talking about there's something giant in the ocean that comes out. That is the universal part. And everybody talks about that when this thing comes out of the ocean, that is going to be very, very bad. Okay. But they don't talk about why it comes out. This is what is written, which, as I've said, that is written in the Lovecraft books. Okay. That and some of this is written in some of the older books too, that the reason it's asleep at the bottom of the ocean is because the sky is poisonous to it now. And when the sky changes and the stars align is when he will awaken. And maybe that's why in the book of Revelation, when when the door to the bottomless pit is open and all this soot come out, that is what changes the sky. Or maybe if you notice in all the Godzilla movies, he only comes out after you have a lot of volcanic activity. That is what changes the sky and allows him to come out. See, we don't really know. Okay. So is the sky poisonous to him because we have too much oxygen? He needs the world to be a lot more carbon dioxide. And when the world gets full of soot, when the air gets full of soot and smoke and all this stuff, this is what they mean by the sky will change. You know, the atmosphere changes. We have no idea. But I believe since this stories of this giant monster all over the world is told, and in so many cultures around the world have this story of these giant serpent or giant octopus or giant this that comes out of the ocean. And when this thing comes out, he is not coming out to do kumbaya. He's not coming out to teach us the latest dance steps. This will be maybe the end of the age of mankind. Okay. Because this gets into something which is talked about in Necronomicon. And the Mad Arab talked about this. Okay. That, remember, when the Anunnaki first came to the earth, mammals was not here. The old ones was here. After the old ones, which was leather skin and clover feet, dinosaurs, blasphemed against God, and they was destroyed from the surface of the earth and driven into their underground cave. This is why there have always been stories about when you go deep underground, you come across these creatures that, they say in the books, there are creatures that look like dinosaurs, very deep in caves, and giant lizards, but they're different. Okay. What does that mean? Okay. And this was talked about when Jules Verne's wrote about when he talked about, his journey to the center of the earth, how you come across these giant creatures. This is what also, I hate to say this, when we started to explore the North Pole and the South Pole, and we was trying to find out about this hidden land beyond the pole. Okay. And people were seeing these mammoths and these humongous looking creatures. Okay. There's a lot of things that are written in books, especially when you get around the turn of the century, when people was first starting to explore, they was talking about some of the weird creatures they would see. Today, when you talk about people going to the North Pole or South Pole, they don't talk about weird things or weird stuff or weird color snow or weird this or weird. They don't talk about any of this. But a lot of this stuff was written around the turn of the century in the 1910s, 1920s. They was talking about color snow and this and that, and how they would find very weird stuff, and how and as you got very high in elevation, when you went above close to above 82 and 83 degree, as you getting, the North Pole is supposed to be at 90. So once you get up to 82, 83, 84, going towards 90, the saltiness of the ocean goes down. The ocean is not as salty. It's a lot more, the salt concentration is a lot less. You start seeing differences in things. This is written about in books. Okay. But we're not talking about Hollow Earth today. We're just talking about this creature and these creatures that supposedly be in the ocean. Now, is there any modern thing that talk about this stuff besides for fictional stuff? Is there any proof of monstrous stuff out there that is hiding in the ocean? Or is this just all make-believe? We talked about before the deep ocean and the mystery of the deep ocean. Okay. We know very little about the deep ocean. You know, the earth is 70% water, 30% land. We have only explored around 10% of the oceans. Okay. We have only basically explored the top 500 feet of ocean. But now we have submarines and everything. So you're cruising around in your nuclear submarine at 30, you know, doing the big 30 knots, you're speeding along. And this been a problem with the Navy for a very long time, because today our naval ships are very advanced. They got radar, they got sonar, they got this, they got that. They pick up all kind of stuff. And the Navy has something called anomaly books. And when you're cruising along a mile down in the ocean, doing your big 30 knots, speeding along, and something 2 miles below you go by you at 100 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, and this thing is the size of 2 or 3 football fields, that's probably not Russian. That's probably not Chinese. It goes in the anomaly book. And this is something that not only do we have problems with today that we don't know what this stuff is. Okay. This is what old sailors talked about, is that you have these giant things in the ocean that could grab a ship and pull it down, and these things that had, you know, eyes the size of dinner plates and everything. And we all know those are fictional stories or whatever, but now we know those are not. Those things that had eyes the size of dinner plates, we now call giant squids. Okay. And we now know that giant squids could be, you know, 100, 200 feet long. Okay. But we believe that there's something called humongous squids out there, because, which the Navy hate to talk about this stuff, but this have happened more than on one occasion, where you're in the ocean and you're cruising along at a mile down or something, and something grabs your submarine and toss it around, and then it let it go. And submarines today have a plastic coating on the outside, a rubbery coating on the outside of them. And this is so they're silent, so other ships cannot pick them up. And what have happened on more than one occasion, that the outside coating has been extremely damaged by something grabbing the submarine and I guess trying to eat it. Okay, now you gotta be, if something is gonna grab a submarine and damage the outer coating, and it's all these cuttings, and in one occasion it was these giant circular marks all on the outside of the sub. You know, it looks like those was the suction cups of a squid or an octopus. You got to imagine how big that mother must have been if it's going to grab a submarine. It must have been at least twice the size of the submarine if it's going to try to eat it. Maybe 3 times the size. Maybe that's what they're picking up when they're cruising along and they see this thing 2 or 3 miles down. Okay. We now know that we thought that megamouth sharks was extinct millions of years ago, because we have cameras on our drilling rigs in the deep ocean. We now know that they're not extinct, because we have picked up on camera sharks that they're bigger than the drilling rig. Okay. And this thing goes by the rig and it's like, oh my gosh. And we thought a big shark was 25 feet or whatever. We have seen things on camera that looks like a shark, but some of these things are 100, 200 feet long. Okay. There's all kind of stuff out there we don't know about. Okay. So this is just talking about what we have picked up on our anomaly books. I'm going to tell you about some stuff that's super scary that they don't want to talk about. Okay. Now, the Navy got sonars all over the bottom of the ocean, everywhere. Because, I'm going to tell you this, I'm getting in trouble. Every submarine, I don't care how much coating you put on the outside, every submarine and every ship has a unique sound. So, you might be thinking that, hey, nobody knows we're down here. I'm cruising at a mile below the surface, and I'm cruising at my big 30 knots. But when you go past that sonar, they say, oh, that's that's the Russian submarine 137. Or that's that Chinese submarine 258. Okay. Because every submarine has a unique sound. So we have these sonars everywhere at the bottom of the ocean. So we can track these ships out there. Because in case a war breaks out, we need to blow up that thing. So we want to have some kind of idea. And since submarines can be out for 6 months, before they surface, they leave port and come back 6-9 months later before they come back to port. You need to have some idea of that thing. If you need to blow it up, where to go looking at. So we have a good idea where that nuclear submarine, where that Russian submarine is located, because it passed that sonar 3 days ago. And if we need to go looking for it, we had a pretty good idea of where it's located. Okay, you see what I'm saying? But that's what the sonars was put in the ocean to do. But these sonars at the bottom of the ocean they pick up sounds. They pick up sounds of whales and dolphins make sounds. And they send signals. And we all know the sounds of whales and the sounds of dolphins, and every type of whale has its own sound. The problem is, they've been picking up sounds at the bottom of the ocean, and some of these sounds, they don't know what in the hell this stuff is. It sounds like, some of these sounds are so loud that some of these sounds, they radiate for hundreds of miles in the ocean. Okay. And when they extrapolate for something to make a sound, and it sounds like something fighting or something, growling or something like that. And they don't think that this is like a landslide or something, because when you get a sliding, sonars know what, landslides sound like. They think these are some kind of animals or some kind of fish or some kind of something, because it's like a song or some kind of growling or some kind of whatever. And you can go on the internet and look for deep water sounds or deep water unknown sounds. Some of these sounds, according to science, for whatever the creature is to make a sound that loud that can travel hundreds of miles, they estimate that the size of some of these creatures must be hundreds and hundreds of feet long to make sounds that can travel hundreds of miles. Okay. We have no idea what's in there. And these sounds have not only been heard in the ocean. What's been recorded all over the land for the last decade or two is these kind of scraping sounds under the ground, or kind of weird sounds. See, there's two types of sounds people have been recording. Weird sounds coming from the air. They call these trumpet sounds, or these weird sounds coming from the sky. And these scraping sounds, or something howling sounds that's coming deep from the earth. Okay. Both of these sounds, we don't have an explanation for. And you can look these up. Okay. Some people, these sounds coming from the sky, scientists are saying this is caused by the aurora borealis, but people know what aurora borealis sounds like. It sounds like ooh, that type of sound that you get in Canada or Newfoundland or in Greenland and Iceland. People know about that. But these sounds, very, very weird. Okay. And these sounds coming deep within the earth. Nobody knows what these sounds are. Okay. Is there something down there waking up? Okay. Is there giant eggs inside the earth? We have no idea. We have no idea. And the problem is, if we can't even handle a little virus, what would we do? And this is what happens in the Japanese movies. What would we do if a giant something did come out of the ocean? If it looks like Godzilla, if it looks like a giant squid, if it looks like a giant octopus, if it looks like a giant dragon, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Do we have the weaponry? Do we have the technology to go up against something like that? And maybe if it takes out Tokyo, we'll say, well, it's okay. But what happens if it takes out New York City or take out, there's no telling. And this is if it's only one of them. The problem is, some of these books talk about that there's more than one of these creatures in the ocean. And this is what the Godzilla movies talk about. At first it was only Godzilla. But then you start getting into the other monsters start rising, and these monsters are fighting each other. This is where these stories about, the Cthulhu Wars talk about, where these giant monsters are going to fight, just like they did in the last Godzilla movie, because Godzilla want to be king of the monsters. In Zulu Wars, they're fighting to see which one of these monsters is going to take possession of the earth. But it's not man to take possession of the earth. Which one of these giant monsters is going to take possession of the earth? Okay. And what are we doing in this? In the Godzilla movie, the last one, we just let them fight it out, and we was cheerleaders for Godzilla. Okay. But after Godzilla killed all the other monsters in the movie, he went back into the ocean. What happens if he don't go back in the ocean? That's what we're going to do. So, we don't know. But to me, as I said, these stories go all around the world about this giant thing that's in the mountain. I mean, in the ocean. There's stories about, about these dragons in the sky and all kind of stuff, and that the last of the dragons died, but they're eggs. And this is why you hear these stories about people finding dragon eggs and whatever. But what's going to make these dragon eggs hatch? Do they hatch by themselves, or do you just have to find them? Or is the sky poisonous to them now and they're waiting for the sky to change? Okay, see, this is what we don't know. We don't know. See, we have nothing because, as I mentioned before, see, our planet, even if you go by science say that the Earth is 4.3 billion years old. Of all the ages upon the Earth, there was no mammals up until very recently. And mammals just appeared out of nowhere. Okay. After the end of the dinosaurs, mammals just appeared. There was no mammals before. And if you read the old books, it explains why there was no mammals until very recently. Because the old books, I hate to tell you this, it says that mammals was first brought to the earth as pets. Okay. But after the extinction of the dinosaur, they was brought here in very large numbers. Who is they? That's very scary. And this might explain why we have so many problems. Because we're the only species ourselves. Bears or cats don't need midwives to have babies. a lot of women have always died in childbirth, especially before the modern age, because, a woman's body, she's barely, her hips and everything is barely big enough for the baby to come out. It totally stretches and tears everything. Okay. And a lot of times the baby is just too big to come out. And a lot of times, if it wasn't for modern medical equipment, the lady would die. This is why back in the old days, a lot of women died through childbirth. Because if the baby was too big to come out or turned the wrong way or this or that, the lady died. Today we do C-sections. That's don't have that problem. How come other types of things don't have that problem? How come only us have these problems? And how come we are allergic to our own planet? You don't see cats and dogs like, ooh, that's poison ivy over there. I better not touch that. Ooh, that's this or that. Ooh, the sun is out. I better put sunscreen on. How come we have all these problems? Because we're not native to this planet either. There's a lot of things we don't know about. And when you start reading these old books and old Samaritan texts and old Hindu texts and all this and that, it's talking about all kind of weird stuff that maybe they're telling the truth. And maybe we're going to have to accept that maybe history is not the way we believe it is. And maybe, there was, a lot of things, as they talk about in the Bible, how the gods ruled and this and that and, and all this stuff. You have the Sumerian kings list and the Egyptian king list. They talk about the god kings and they ruled for tens of thousands of years. And then they talk about the demigod kings, which was half man, half God, where they ruled. And then they mention who was the first human king. Now, if the first human king is way down here, who is all those people way up there? And then it talks about who was the king at the time of the Great Flood. And that's in the Egyptian list. The Chinese list is also in the Sumerian list. There's so much we don't know about our own history. So I'm not going to tell you that this Cthulhu thing is real. But I'm hoping it's not real. And hopefully he did get killed. Okay. I don't know. But maybe, we can't even handle a virus. What would we do if something did come out of the ocean? And what is very scary is these college kids, are they actually going around practicing the chants that they have to do? Because according to Lovecraft, for Cthulhu to rise, he needs help from man. And man has to say the special cantations to help him to rise. And there's people that will help him to rise, to end the end of mankind. Is there people out there really doing that? That sounds very bad. Extremely bad. Hopefully that's not true, right? We wouldn't do that, right? I don't have any answers. But only thing I say after this, I probably need a beer. Maybe you need a drink too. But hopefully we will not find out one day that something rises. So hopefully if it does, may it rise in the future, not today, because right now we got enough problems on it. We can't even handle a virus. We can't handle a giant monster coming out of the ocean. We just can't handle that. So if you want to read more on this, you can look up the word Cthulhu. You can look up all the things I was telling you about these stories about dragons and whatever. Everything I talk about is not crazy talk. There's supporting information, but these legends go all over the world. You need to do some research and you need to find out on your own. But I'm here to let you know, because I believe the only way we're going to ever get an answer to some of this is if we start looking into it. I hope you enjoyed what we discussed today. I hope it wasn't too scary. Maybe you need to have a drink or two like me before you go to bed tonight. And we're going to do it again very soon. But my name is Lynn Livsey. I'm your full spectrum Gnostic. And for now, I say good night. Thank you. Bye.